Video number 3. I'd like to talk about some of the spooky things about being a hospice caregiver, things that you've probably heard of, but not in that context. My father passed away 3 years ago, the first month of COVID, not by COVID, but by being run over by a hit and run in San Luis Obispo. And he was in the hospital unconscious for 9 days. After, his spirit knocked on my door every night around 2 in the morning, and I would get the flashlight, go downstairs, shine it all around the door, nothing. Every night, week after week, I got tired of it, and so I said to him, "You've always said Mother was your love of your life. You met her when she was 14, and you never stopped loving her." And I said, "Oh, go find her, you know? This is your opportunity to be with her again or see her again. So please go find her and leave me alone." Well, believe it or not, the next night, no more noise. During some of the years that I was a nurse and dealing with patients that were dying, they used to ring the phone. And also, right around 2 in the morning, nobody answered, but you could hear them on the other end of the line. The deep breathing, the this and that. It wasn't like a perv calling either. My wife began to pick up the phone and say, "Okay, we know you just passed. I'll tell Tom." And then she would go on her way because she knew that this was part of it. One of the patients I want to tell you about, there were 5 of us because I was the nurse on duty and then we had CNAs. The lady was wealthy and she had enough money to have a staff, so she wanted to be taken care of the whole time. But her house was full of spirits, just full. One time, 3 of us were standing in the living room and looked down the hallway, and there was this person not walking down the hallway because there wasn't anything but their waist up. And I took a picture of it. I'm not sure I can find it, but I probably can, of this being, so that the rest of the staff would at least recognize it and not be afraid of it. Well, my wife, of course, didn't believe in any of this, but she did help out on Friday night because I was pretty exhausted by then. And she would come over and stay overnight. So anyway, she got where she didn't want to be in the guest bedroom, so she stayed on the couch. And one night, the spirit came in, grabbed her, and threw her off the couch into the floor. She suddenly believed that there were spirits and no longer thought the other of us out of 5 were nuts, which she could have, but she didn't. She wasn't anymore. So those are 2 incidences that come along when you are working with people, and it doesn't stop there. We had a lot of, in the formal hospice, meaning the institutional hospice, we had people who presented us with that sort of thing too. One lady, I walked up to her bed with another nurse, and I really felt bad. I said, I can't be here, I'm going to leave. I would recommend you leave the room too. She didn't, and when she did come out, she said, "I feel like I've been kicked in the stomach." I said, "I know exactly what you're going through. It was a terrible, terrible thing there." And we've had patients who, when you talk to them because you knew them for several weeks, sometimes months, and when you talk to them, there was somebody else talking through them because it was an entirely different personality. They usually were nasty talkers compared to the patient themselves. And it was just amazing to experience this. Because of the way I believe in the things I know from childhood, I was often asked to go visit patients that other nurses who were having what they considered spirit problems with. And I would go out, and generally the first thing I did was walk in the room, and instead of addressing the Mary Smith or John Doe, I would say, "I would like to talk to you, the one that's been talking to us and disrespectful to us." And I want to know who you are if you kindly let us know. It wasn't unusual that they did. We had a security guard from the prison in our county who was dying, and he had been exposed for years and years to the nastiest stuff on earth. And when he stopped eating and drinking, the average time it seems to take somebody to die is 10 days. He actually lived 20, and we thought he was just not going to die. But I explained it this way. I said, that's not him in there. He probably left 20 days ago, and who's ever in there is looking for somebody else to live in, and they're not about to give up this body until they find it. So they are probably out searching for someone to continue their life in a body, and they just didn't want to leave because humans generally that doesn't happen, although I'm sure it could. And then the last story I'd like to tell is I pronounced one of the men dead in my small little town, and I called the doctor and said he died, at so-and-so hour. And he had been waiting on this little girl next door. She was young and loved him to death and had so much energy. So she comes in the room with all that energy. He wakes up. This is 15 or 20 minutes later. So I called my hospice office and I said, what do I do now? I pronounced him dead and he's back awake. And the hospice nurse on duty, who knew a lot more than I did at the time, said, oh, he'll die in a few more minutes. Don't worry about it. If you call the doctor, it would be a waste of time because he will go. And sure enough, he did. It was her energy that awakened him or pulled him back from wherever he was going. And it was just astounding to see that. I'll never forget it. I thought it was probably one of the highlights of being a nurse and caring for the dying.